There are many different types of animated films. As a medium, the art form can take on all kinds of different shapes, from stop motion to the 3D visuals of CGI to the traditional hand-drawn look. As far as stories go, some movies are more realistic, while others are much more cartoonish and exaggerated, fully taking advantage of the fact that in animation you can just do whatever you want. There's narrative storytelling like the classic princess fairy tales, and then there's abstract animation like Fantasia or the Yellow Submarine movie that the Beatles made while they were all strung out on drugs. Then there's a style of animation that, if done right, can be absolutely brilliant, an animated film about animated characters and how they interact with each other and their world. They're all self-aware films about animation, unafraid to parody the craft itself. They're often celebrating and mocking the form in equal measure, in a way that requires a deeper understanding and appreciation. I think because of that, they're important to talk about. So my name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today we're gonna talk... The Simpsons is just one piece of a larger entertainment conglomerate that was pushing boundaries at a time that needed to push boundaries. And the show is crucial in where TV has ended up and how we view animation in a larger... Wait, hold on. What are we doing? You need me to do what? I guess it's time to get to work.
If they want this smoking, it's no jokes, boy, it's tough. In the end zone, that's a TD, we finessing Chuck. Filling up the stat sheets and they knowing that's a plus. Back to back, highlight plays, all my moves is tough. Watch them all die out, I've been killing with my looks.
Alright, Joe, so I just got off the phone with YouTube, and they said that we need to make something that's going to get views. So, pitch me an idea.
Like, what kind of idea? What do you want? Like, oh, should we do something with Roblox?
I don't know enough about those things. So maybe something a bit more nostalgic. That's what YouTube was telling me.
YouTube?
Yeah, listen, I talked to YouTube. There's a lot of mysteries about it. The algorithm, not a lot of people really understand it. I don't really understand it, but they told me that we just got to make a video. As my co-writer, I thought that you might have some ideas.
Like, are we talking 90s nostalgia? Are we talking, like, Gen X nostalgia? Boomers?
I think 80s and 90s is definitely something that we've hit before.
Okay, 80s, 90s things. Reaganomics.
I've done politics before and it doesn't go over well.
Is anyone doing videos on...
It doesn't get more nostalgic than Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit was the first ever true successful meta-animated film. Originally debuting in 1988, I grew up with Roger Rabbit during the Michael Eisner era of Disney when Eisner was looking to make Roger Rabbit his version of Mickey Mouse.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner.
I remember first seeing the Roger character at an early age on one of those free preview weekends of Disney Channel. You know, the ones that you'd get a few times a year if you had cable? And what I loved about Roger is that he combined the best of all of the major studios of the early 1900s, long before I ever knew any of the history of animation at the time. See, Roger Rabbit does a few things well. There's an underlying story about how the automotive industry killed the trolley system across the US.
Hey, mister, ain't you got a car?
Who needs a car in LA? We got the best public transportation system in the world.
Then there's the fact that while kids might like the cartooniness of the movie, adults might connect more with Eddie or Judge Doom, who both dislike tunes for different reasons.
Tunes.
And I'm not saying that all adults don't like animation. I'm proof of that myself. I absolutely adore it. But this movie was trying to have something for everybody, no matter their age or what they preferred. The biggest takeaway from this film, at least for this video that I'm making, is the nostalgia that it has through its cameos. And there's good and bad that come along with having cameos. You can make a case that Ready Player One does it wrong, because it's filled with a bunch of nostalgia, but none of it really pertains to the story that's being told. Ultimately, I remember the Iron Giant or Transformers coming on screen, but I could tell you very little about what happens in that film, and yeah, I never read the book. There's also nostalgia like Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. I left that movie smiling, beaming from ear to ear because, yeah, it gave me those nostalgic Star Wars feels, but it was such a carbon copy of the original Star Wars film, it never really added anything new or interesting to the saga. Now, nostalgia, when done well, actually a story doesn't need it at all, but is complemented by the nostalgia when a character pops up or when something is alluded to. What Roger Rabbit does is creates a meaningful story and then adds characters from the past that you might know and love, or might be discovering for the first time. Yes, they could have done this entire film with brand new characters, but adding the nostalgia weaves it all together. It's a story that's enriched with its nostalgia. Plus, there's just nothing like Roger Rabbit. I was in elementary school when I first saw this film, and it connected with me so much that I shared it with my friends and with all of my cousins because, yeah, I'm an only child and I have no siblings, so I've got to share it with somebody. But what really came out of this is a desire to learn more about animation. Of course, there were the classic Disney and Warner Brothers characters that were easy to find, but what about Betty Boop or Droopy Dog? Why had I never seen them before? Roger Rabbit gave audiences a chance to either reminisce or to find characters and animation studios that they were unfamiliar with. Through Roger Rabbit, I discovered Fleischer Studios, who created Betty Boop and Coco the Clown, and
Wait, hold on. You just made up Coco the Clown, right? That's not a thing.
It's real. Like, there's a tattoo artist that made a whole video where he recreated the cartoon by tattooing it frame by frame onto people's bodies. When I talk about these kinds of things, I'm talking about like Tex Avery, like he created Droopy Dog, or Chuck Jones with the Looney Tunes.
Yeah, that all rings a bell. I definitely watched a lot of Jetsons, and I feel like the future they promised was a lie. Where's my robot?
I would love those kinds of things too. And you know what? For whatever reason, people have been talking about Scooby-Doo a lot recently. There's a lot of really popular YouTube videos about Scooby-Doo.
Oh man, are we gonna become one of those channels? Scooby-Doo channel. Let's go.
Regardless of all of that, YouTube was telling me that we should probably shoot some other video in different places and not just on this background, which I totally get. So I think I found the perfect spot for Roger Rabbit.
But you blew your whole budget on that background.
I can't argue with it. So I think I'm going to go to that spot. In Roger Rabbit, the tunnel between Hollywood and Toontown?
Oh yeah, that one's in a bunch of movies, like Back to the Future 2, when Marty's on the back of Biff's car.
earlier I said that Roger Rabbit was the first ever successful meta-animated film, and while I still think that that's true, it would be a disservice if I at least didn't mention Cool World and the Ralph Bakshi films. Movies like Heavy Traffic and Fritz the Cat were blurring the line between the creator and their creations during the 1970s and 80s. But Batsky's success was minimal at best because his films were meant for a more adult-oriented audience. Fritz the Cat was the first animated film to ever get an X rating. Cool World is a film that came 4 years after Roger Rabbit, and while it looks and feels like Roger Rabbit, its story is less a love story to animation and more of a use of the hybrid style to tell a noir film. It also made very little at the box office, so nobody saw it, and even though there is a cult following to his films, it just wasn't as successful as it could have been.
You keep your pencil in your pocket. You know what I mean?
What about Shrek? Everyone loves Shrek. Do Shrek.
Oh yeah, there's this thing in town called the Shrek Rave. I think it's hilarious, and I could probably go shoot a bunch of video there.
There's a Shrek rave?
Yeah, it's something... I'm not sure why it exists.
Wait, did you change shirts?
Glad you noticed. Yeah, I just got these new shirts. YouTube told me that I should make new shirts, so it says animation is for everyone, and I made this little logo on it. So, people can buy them.
Is that supposed to be the Modern Mouse?
I don't know. It was something that YouTube told me to do, so that's just what I did. But if you want one, I could probably send you one. I just have to get people to click the link down in the description below.
You should probably get back to talking about Shrek and why it's so important before YouTube calls.
Alright, Shrek. I know that the film has become a bit of a meme nowadays, but it was truly a revolutionary film when it came out, and it followed in the same footsteps as Roger Rabbit. It does use nostalgia, but Shrek is much more of a parody. The film uses its protagonist to put classic fairy tale characters that we know and love into new scenarios and expose those characters in a variety of ways. Like Roger Rabbit, Shrek takes a ton of characters you probably know and puts them all together in one world, rather than in their own separate stories. In that way, we get to see what would happen if the Gingerbread Man or Pinocchio also lived in the same world as the evil Queen's mirror. We would get some sort of version of that much later with the ABC show Once Upon a Time, but that show is much more sincere and dramatic. Shrek it isn't. To understand the meta of Shrek, I think that you need to know a little bit of the backstory of DreamWorks, the animation studio that created it, because in 1994, during the Disney Renaissance, Jeffrey Katzenberg was in charge of the animation department. Essentially, with a great team behind him, he dug Disney animation out of the trenches of films like The Black Cauldron, and started creating films that are still celebrated today, like The Lion King or The Little Mermaid. Unfortunately, he and then CEO Michael Eisner
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner.
clashed over his position in the company, and he'd end up leaving to create DreamWorks with Spielberg and Geffen, where he'd end up making Shrek. So for Shrek, the big joke was the Disney-fication of fairy tales, and how much the main character is just not that. It was a big success because you could look at Shrek and say, hey, look at all these Disney-type characters and how much they're getting made fun of. Isn't that neat? Shrek weaved the nostalgia into its narrative perfectly. And in seeing it in theaters, I loved it. I think at the time we all did. We all loved Shrek. It was fantastic, or Shrektastic, or Shrekalicious, Shrektacular, Shrekfabulous.
Hey, wait, did you go to that Shrek rave?
No, but I think I did something better. I found my old DVD box set of all the Shrek movies, so I figured that I would go sit down and watch all of them and film myself doing it.
You recorded yourself watching a movie?
Movies, Joe. I watched movies. Plus, YouTube told me that I should probably start showing my work, since a lot of the comments keep saying that I don't actually watch the films I talk about.
Think that's what they mean when they say show your work. Nobody cares that much.
They do, Joe. They do.
Shrek also subverted the classic animated story. Rather than seeking adventure, Shrek just wants to go home. He isn't really looking for love or to become a prince. The faithful animal sidekick, he actually hates him.
You dense, irritating miniature beast of burden! Ogres are like onions! End of story. Bye-bye.
This isn't a story where you're supposed to fall in love with the perfect hero, because that just doesn't exist. Like Roger Rabbit, Shrek appeals to all ages, and despite the fact that DreamWorks has had moderate success with a lot of its other films, none of them come close to how great and successful Shrek and its sequels were. And that's because of its mass appeal that spans generations, because of how it pokes fun at its own medium. And I think we also at least should maybe sort of talk about Smash Mouth. Despite all of the crap that everyone gives them because they were the Nickelback before Nickelback, they were a great fit for Shrek, and they made that film more memorable. Maybe it's just the sheer number of times that I've had to hear the song All-Star, but I think that it's become a rather profound song as it's aged. The line, "The years start coming and they don't stop coming," just hits a bit differently when every day you have to wake up and hear some news that you just don't want to hear. Like, I want 5 minutes of peace, for the love of God, where I don't have to hear something awful that's happening everywhere, every day, all at once. Like, Jesus Christ, give me just a moment.
It's funny, Joe, because Shrek wasn't even the first film to use All-Star.
Yeah, it was Mystery Men. Everyone forgets that.
Right, and Mystery Men came out spoofing the superhero genre long before the superhero genre was putting out like 15 films a year.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It came out way ahead of its time. Are you eating an onion? Like a raw onion?
I watched all the Shrek films and I felt like this would connect me more to it. Like ogres, you know, like people, like onions with layers.
Are you okay?
Anyways, let's talk about the film that combines the best of Shrek with the best of Roger Rabbit, and that's Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. This was one of my favorite films of 2022, and I feel like after it was released, nobody ever really talked about it again, but it's brilliant. For some weird reason, Disney decided that it would be a direct-to-streaming film. But it took the characters from the original TV series, Chip, Dale, Monterey Jack, Gadget, and Zipper, and told a story about those characters as if they were actors in a TV series. Created by The Lonely Island, the guys who masterfully mocked the music world through their Saturday Night Live digital shorts, Rescue Rangers is self-aware, understanding that they are, in fact, animated figures and not representations of real people. What it lacks in sincerity, it makes up for with a mix of cameos, parody, and heart. The beauty of the meta-animated films is that animation doesn't really age, or at least these characters don't age, and different styles of animation blend perfectly together. Rescue Rangers took the opportunity to use that to their benefit. For Roger Rabbit, which came out in the late 1980s, the only real popular variant of animation was the hand-drawn 2D style. But Rescue Rangers was able to update the meta-narrative with styles that had come since Roger, or with styles of animation that Roger Rabbit never tried to poke fun at. That includes stop-motion animation, the style of CGI that was popularized by Pixar, and the continued use of turning traditionally two-dimensional characters into 3D for the purpose of a film like The Smurfs or Alvin and the Chipmunks. Rescue Rangers finds joy in representing the greatness of animation, like how they use stop-motion to bring to life a Gumby-style character with Captain Putty. But I think more importantly, the film isn't afraid to look back at the trends of animation that did not work. Of course, everyone got a laugh at Ugly Sonic, since the original Sonic film was completely retooled in order to make Sonic more friendly looking. But they also took liberties at mocking the Uncanny Valley animation of the late 2000s. Films like Beowulf or The Polar Express tried to recreate a very true-to-life look, but technology was not up to par, and you could argue that it's still not there. So instead, those characters just live in this weird, uncanny valley that's more creepy than anything else.
Joe, it's interesting that a majority of these Uncanny Valley films were made by Robert Zemeckis.
Then he went on to make Polar Express and gave us a variety of Tom Hanks' Cold Dead Eyes.
But he used Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump.
Then he used Tom Hanks as Geppetto in the new Pinocchio, so balance broken.
Like Shrek, Rescue Rangers also subverts some expectations while playing off of millennial and 90s nostalgia. You wouldn't expect Zipper to have such a baritone voice in the film, or him and Gadget to have become a couple, but the film creates that narrative, and now it will just never leave my brain.
Ah, there it is, the foreboding fortress on the horizon.
Oh, I love it when you talk fancy, honey.
Thank you, my love.
I was hesitant when I first heard that they were going to make a live-action Rescue Rangers film, and I was even more hesitant after watching the first trailer. I mean, they were playing with my childhood, but you know what? I kind of liked it. It gave me enough of what I remembered or what I wanted, while also working to subvert my expectations and create something new. It challenged my view of certain characters and how they behave, and I like that. The thing that Rescue Rangers does best, and why I think that these meta films are important, is that it conveys a sense of love for the craft while acknowledging both the best and worst qualities of the animation medium. I can't stress this enough, it takes a real student of the game to create films like these. If not, then they would just come off as kind of shallow, or would be a misunderstanding of what makes animation great. And I don't think that you have to be an animator or even to have worked in the animation industry, but I do think that you have to have a deep appreciation for the medium and an understanding of its history. Animation is such a special branch of the entertainment industry. Like I said before, animation ages gracefully. Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out in 1937, and it has to be the most viewed film from that year. I would challenge you to come up with a film that's been watched more from that year, or to even name multiple films that came out in 1937 without looking it up. In fact, I'm going to call a film major friend of mine and ask her if she's seen any of the other top-grossing films of that year besides Snow White. Saratoga.
No.
Maytime.
Maytime? No.
The Good Earth.
No.
Stella Dallas.
No.
The Broadway Melody of 1938.
Nope.
Captain Courageous.
No.
Lost Horizon.
No.
The original version of A Star is Born.
No.
And A Day at the Races.
That one sounds more familiar. Like I might have seen that one in film school, but no.
Well, thank you for helping me with this experiment.
What makes animation great, and what these films in particular point out, is that animation is intended for everyone, and it's meant to entertain everyone. It's easy to re-fall in love with 90s nostalgia thanks to the Rescue Rangers film, but I would also say that the Chip and Dale characters have always been entertaining ever since they were introduced decades ago. The physical comedy of Roger Rabbit has been funny since the debut of Bugs Bunny in the 1930s or even earlier. Animation at its best appeals to a wide variety of people, and thanks to dubbing, is now more universal than most live-action films. There's always been this stigma around animation that it's just kids stuff, but there's all these characters that we grew up loving, and many of us still do. In fact, if you have a character that you love, leave it in the comments down below this video. And I'm not even talking about characters from this video, or Disney or Warner Brothers. Leave a comment with your favorite animated character, no matter who it is, down below, and tell us why, because I think that everybody's going to have a completely different answer. It's fascinating, and it shows our love for animation. The reason why I love doing Modern Mouse and why I love talking about animation is because I see the value in the all-ages demographic, not just for kids and not just for adults. I like that I can reach a wide variety of people that spans generations. And I think that it's worth noting that animation isn't just worth watching, but revisiting over and over again. For fans of the films or TV shows I talked about, my videos might bring you validation or an additional layer of understanding and love. For those who are watching and learning about animation for the first time, I hope that you find a deeper appreciation for the art form as I have from many years of research and viewings. Like Roger Rabbit, Shrek, or Rescue Rangers, I constantly want to create videos about film and television because I love it so much. Really, I guess I'm just a student of the game, and I found myself in somewhat of a teacher role, and I'll gladly continue these conversations, whether it's here in the comments or on Discord or on Twitter. And hey, I guess this is a weird way for me to say, check out my social media. You can find all the links in the description. But my name's Josh Taylor. This is Modern Mouse, and welcome to a brand new season. And I hope you'll follow me as we look into what all ages really means, as we navigate media from both the past and the present. And until next time, keep moving forward. Okay, how was that?
A fine start, but people want you to talk about film eras. You started talking about the live-action films 2 years ago, and still haven't finished.
Those are like a ton of work to do. I've got to watch all the movies, and then there's all the different notes I have to take and research. So much goes into those.
Give the people what they want, what they demand. Don't you read the comments?
I mean, I do want to make stuff for the fans, but wouldn't it be easier to make a video about something like why Marvel makes too many movies every year, or why it was a bad idea to make a sequel to Enchanted?
No. You have your instructions. You know what to do.